My name is Robert Davis. I'm 55 years old, and for 18 long years I dedicated my life to PharmaCore Solutions, a pharmaceutical giant headquartered in Newark, New Jersey. I was the senior regulatory compliance analyst, the invisible guardian of quality standards that ensured our medications reached the American market safely and ethically. 18 years. 18 years waking up at 5 in the morning, taking the same NJ transit train, sitting at the same desk on the 12th floor, reviewing protocols, analyzing clinical trial data, making sure every comma in our FDA reports was perfect. I was the guy nobody noticed until something went wrong. And when something went wrong, everyone knew who to call. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. My work was essential but discreet. While executives shined in shareholder meetings, I was backstage ensuring the company wouldn't get slapped with million-dollar fines for regulatory violations. It was work that demanded meticulous attention to detail, deep knowledge of federal regulations, and above all, absolute integrity. Everything started changing when Eleanor Vance took over as CEO in January 2023. 48 years old, Wharton MBA, a sharp smile, and an obsession with numbers that made her see people as spreadsheet items. She brought with her a new vision for PharmaCore, accelerated growth, cost-cutting, and in her words, elimination of bureaucratic redundancies. From day one, I felt I was in her crosshairs. In general meetings, she talked about process modernization and operational agility, always with a look that seemed to cut straight through my department. To Eleanor, I was dead weight, an obstacle to her vision of quick profits. In the last months under her management, I began noticing subtle changes. Test protocols that normally went through my screening started getting approved through other channels. Clinical trial reports arrived at my desk already pre-approved, leaving me just to rubber stamp them. Contracts with suppliers I didn't recognize appeared in financial records. My meticulous nature made me document everything, not out of suspicion but professional habit. Every questionable email, every report with inconsistent data, every questionable financial transfer. I kept everything in encrypted digital files outside the company network as a way to protect the integrity of my work. On the morning of March 15, 2024, a Friday I'll never forget, I received a terse email from Eleanor. "Robert, please come to my office at 2:30 p.m. Subject, important discussion about your position." I went up to the 22nd floor with a strange feeling in my stomach. The CEO's office had a view of the Manhattan skyline, a constant reminder of the power she wielded. Eleanor was sitting behind her glass desk, with Mark Sullivan, the R&D director, and Brenda Miller, the marketing chief, flanking her like loyal generals. "Robert," she said without even inviting me to sit, "your position is redundant. We're restructuring the compliance department. We need a more dynamic profile, someone who understands modern market demands." The words came out of her mouth like bullets. Cold, precise, lethal. "Your services are no longer needed," she continued, sliding a sealed envelope across the desk. "There's your severance package. Quite generous considering the circumstances." I felt my blood boil but kept my voice calm. "Understood." "Great," she smiled. "We hoped you'd be reasonable. Brenda here will escort you to your desk so you can collect your personal belongings. Security has already been notified." 18 years of loyalty, reduced to a cardboard box and an escort to the door. As I walked through the corridors carrying my few personal belongings, with Brenda Miller beside me like a prison guard, a sharp clarity took hold of me. They didn't know what they had just done. They didn't know that I had in my hands evidence of a scheme that could destroy not just their careers, but the very company they thought they controlled. I left PharmaCore Solutions that March afternoon without looking back. But as I walked to the train that would take me home, a single certainty echoed in my mind. They thought they had gotten rid of a problem. In reality, they had just created the biggest problem of their lives. In the 3 days following my termination, I stayed home organizing my thoughts and, mainly, organizing the evidence I had collected over the last months. What I discovered when reviewing everything genuinely shocked me. It wasn't just negligence or questionable cost cuts. It was large-scale fraud. Eleanor Vance, Mark Sullivan, and Brenda Miller were orchestrating a $1 million scheme that put at risk not just PharmaCore's integrity, but the safety of thousands of patients. They were falsifying clinical trial data to accelerate FDA approvals, inflating drug efficacy results, and embezzling funds through contracts with shell companies. Worst of all, a new antidepressant called Mind Ease, which was about to be launched in the American market, had its safety data completely falsified. The original tests showed serious side effects in 12% of patients, including suicidal ideation in young adults. In the reports that reached the FDA, this number had been adjusted to 2.3%. Sitting in my home office with stacks of printed documents and 3 monitors displaying spreadsheets and emails, I had an epiphany about the timing of my termination. It wasn't coincidence. They knew I was too close to discovering the full extent of the scheme. My termination wasn't about restructuring. It was about silencing the only person in the company with enough technical knowledge to connect all the dots. What they didn't know is that I had already connected those dots weeks ago. And what they definitely didn't know is that I had taken precautions. During my 18 years at PharmaCore, I learned a valuable lesson. In a highly regulated industry like pharmaceuticals, documentation is power. Every irregularity I had witnessed, every compromising email that passed through my inbox, every meeting where I heard questionable conversations, everything was meticulously documented and stored on secure servers outside the company network. More importantly, 3 months before my termination, when red flags started multiplying, I had set up a contingency system. If I were suddenly removed from the company, a specific set of documents would be automatically sent to 3 destinations: the FDA Inspector General's office in Rockville, Maryland, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of New Jersey, and 2 board members at PharmaCore, whom I knew to be people of integrity. On the Monday following my termination, exactly at 9 a.m., this system was activated. While Eleanor, Mark, and Brenda were probably celebrating my departure, drinking coffee in their offices with Manhattan views, believing they had eliminated the last obstacle to their $1 million scheme, a federal investigation was being initiated based on the evidence I had provided. I didn't need to do anything else. I didn't call journalists, didn't leak information on social media, didn't seek out whistleblowing lawyers. I simply let the truth follow its course through appropriate channels. The first crack in their perfect world appeared on Wednesday. I received a call from Eleanor Vance at 6:30 p.m. Her voice, normally controlled and authoritative, sounded tense. "Robert," she said, trying to maintain a professional tone, "I hope you're adjusting well to your transition. I'd like to know if you could meet with us tomorrow for an informal conversation." "About what, Eleanor?" I asked, knowing exactly about what. "Well, some regulatory issues have come up and, given your deep knowledge of our processes, we thought maybe you could help us clarify some points. As an external consultant, of course, with very attractive compensation." I mentally translated. The FDA had started asking questions they couldn't answer without me. "I'll think about it," I replied. "My lawyer will be in touch." Actually, I didn't have a lawyer yet, but the mention was enough to make Eleanor stutter on the other end of the line. "Lawyer? Robert, there's no need for... This is just a conversation between colleagues." "Former colleagues," I corrected. "And considering you fired me without warning after 18 years of service, I think it's prudent to have legal representation in any future discussions." I hung up and smiled for the first time since Friday. The panic had begun. On Thursday, the situation escalated dramatically. I received not 1, but 3 calls. First Eleanor, then Mark Sullivan, and finally Brenda Miller. Each with a slightly different version of the same story. They wanted to reintegrate me into the team. There had been a misunderstanding. They needed my unique expertise. The most interesting call was from Mark Sullivan at 2 p.m. His voice trembled slightly. "Robert, we need to talk urgently. There are some irregularities. being investigated, and your absence is complicating our ability to respond. We are prepared to offer a Vice President of Regulatory Compliance position with a salary of $280,000 annually, plus stock options. Almost triple my previous salary. Desperation had a high price. Mark, I said calmly, if there are irregularities being investigated, I'm sure PharmaCorp has sufficient resources and talent to handle the situation without my help. Robert, please, be reasonable. We all make mistakes, if there's something you saw that may have caused misunderstandings, we can resolve this internally. Misunderstandings? You know how these regulatory agencies can be. They see problems where none exist. We need someone with your credibility to help clarify that everything was done within standards. At that moment, Mark Sullivan was asking me to lie to federal investigators, to compromise my professional integrity, and potentially make myself an accomplice to federal crimes in exchange for money. My answer is no, Mark, and I suggest you get a good criminal lawyer. The silence on the other end lasted 10 long seconds. When Mark finally spoke, his voice had lost all pretense of cordiality. You're going to regret this, Robert. We have resources. We can make your life very difficult. Good luck with that, I replied, and hung up. On Friday, exactly 1 week after my termination, the bomb exploded. On Friday morning, March 29th, I woke up to my phone ringing incessantly. It was 6:15 a.m. The first name on the screen was James Morrison, an investigative journalist from the Wall Street Journal, whom I knew from pharmaceutical industry conferences. Robert, have you seen the news? He asked, without preamble. What news? The FDA just announced a formal investigation against PharmaCorp Solutions. They're talking about possible falsification of clinical trial data and financial irregularities. Your name is being mentioned as a key source. I turned on the TV, and there it was. Breaking news: FDA launches criminal investigation into major pharmaceutical company. The ticker at the bottom of the screen scrolled information about PharmaCorp, mentioning internal documents obtained by a former employee and possible regulatory fraud worth millions of dollars. My phone didn't stop ringing all day. Journalists, investigators, lawyers, and even some former PharmaCorp colleagues wanting to know what the hell was happening. I kept my responses simple and consistent. I have no comments at this time. Any relevant information was provided to the appropriate authorities through proper channels. At 10:30 a.m., I received a call that made me smile. It was Eleanor Vance, but this time her voice was completely different. Where there had been arrogance before, there was now poorly disguised panic. Robert, we need to meet immediately. This is getting out of control. What exactly is getting out of control, Eleanor? You know very well what. This investigation, based on incomplete information, is hurting hundreds of innocent employees, people who have families, mortgages, kids in college. Interesting, I replied. Last Friday you said my work was redundant. Now you're worried about innocent employees. Robert, be reasonable. We're prepared to make a substantial offer, very substantial. We're talking about a 5-year consulting package, $500,000 annually, full benefits, and a position on the advisory board. $2.5 million. The amount was impressive, but not surprising. Pharmaceutical companies facing criminal investigations can lose billions in fines and lawsuits. Eleanor, you're offering me $500,000 per year to do what exactly? To clarify certain information that may have been misinterpreted by investigators. You want me to lie to federal agents? I didn't say that. You didn't need to. The answer is no. Robert, you don't understand the implications of what you're doing. We have the best lawyers in the country. We can contest your allegations, question your credibility, make your life a legal hell. Do you really want to enter a war against a company with unlimited resources? Eleanor, I said calmly, I'm not at war with anyone. I simply provided facts to the appropriate authorities. If those facts are problematic for you, maybe the problem isn't with me. I hung up and immediately called the lawyer I had hired on Thursday, Daniel Reeves, a specialist in whistleblowing cases with an office in Manhattan. Dan, I just received a bribe offer of $2.5 million followed by legal threats. Did you record the call as I suggested? I recorded everything. This goes straight to the investigators. Eleanor Vance just added obstruction of justice to the original charges. On Monday, April 1st, the irony of the date didn't go unnoticed. The situation exploded completely. The FDA not only confirmed the criminal investigation, but also issued an immediate suspension order for MindEase, the antidepressant that was about to be launched. The official statement mentioned serious concerns about the integrity of safety data provided by the company. At 2:00 p.m., I received a call from Sarah Chen, one of the two people of integrity on PharmaCore's board of directors to whom I had sent the evidence. Robert, I need to inform you that the board met in emergency session this morning. Eleanor Vance, Mark Sullivan, and Brenda Miller have been suspended from their duties effective immediately. An independent forensic audit has been contracted. How did they react? Eleanor tried to claim that you had fabricated evidence out of revenge after your termination. When we presented the emails dated months before your departure, and the recordings of this week's conversations offering bribes, she fell silent. On Tuesday, the scandal made national headlines. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all covering the PharmaCore investigation, with experts discussing the implications for the American pharmaceutical industry. My name was being mentioned as a heroic whistleblower who had risked everything to protect public safety. Heroic. The word sounded strange to me. I had simply done my job, ensuring regulatory compliance. The difference is that this time, doing my job correctly had cost 3 corrupt executives their jobs instead of costing me mine. On Wednesday, I received the call I was expecting. It was from Thomas Bradley, the chairman of PharmaCore's board of directors. Mr. Davis, we would like to know if you would be available for a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. We have a proposal to make. What kind of proposal, Mr. Bradley? Well, considering recent developments and the urgent need to restore public confidence in PharmaCore, the board would like to offer you the position of Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer. It would be a new position, reporting directly to the board, with full authority over all regulatory and ethical matters of the company. SECO. A position that didn't exist a week ago, created specifically for me. What would the salary be, Mr. Bradley? $400,000 annually, with a 50% bonus target based on compliance metrics, stock options equivalent to $200,000 annually, and, Mr. Davis, complete autonomy. No decision of yours can be overturned by any company executive. On Thursday, I entered the same PharmaCore building for the first time since my termination. But this time, instead of going to the 12th floor where my old desk was, the elevator took me to the 23rd floor, one floor above Eleanor Vance's former office. My new office had a view of the Hudson River, and ironically a partial view of the Metropolitan Correctional Center, where Eleanor, Mark, and Brenda would probably spend the next few years. During the meeting with the board, Thomas Bradley handed me a press release that would be issued that afternoon. PharmaCore Solutions announces the appointment of Robert Davis as Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, a new executive position created to ensure the highest standards of integrity and regulatory compliance. Mr. Davis, said Bradley, your first task will be to oversee a complete audit of all our processes and products. You will have unrestricted access to all departments, all documents, all decisions. Your word will be final on compliance matters. I looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline. 3 weeks ago, I had left this same building carrying a cardboard box, fired after 18 years of loyal service. Now I was the company's highest authority on ethics, with power to prevent anything like Eleanor's scheme from ever happening again. I accept, I said simply. Outside, the city's sirens continued to sound, but this time they didn't sound like a funeral. They sounded like a symphony of justice. 6 months later, sitting in my new office on the 23rd floor, I had a privileged view of how justice unfolds in the American system. The criminal case against Eleanor, Mark, and Brenda had become one of the most watched cases in the pharmaceutical industry in decades. The trial began in September. I was called as the prosecution's key witness, but my role was surprisingly simple. All I had to do was explain to the jury what the documents meant, The documents spoke for themselves. Eleanor Vance was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. Mark Sullivan got 6 years for the same crimes. Brenda Miller, who had partially cooperated with investigators, received 4 years. All were ordered to pay restitution totaling $12.4 million, but the professional consequences were even more devastating than the criminal ones. Eleanor, who once commanded a $2.8 billion company, now works in a federal prison library in Danbury, Connecticut, earning $0.23 per hour. Mark lost not only his job but also his license to conduct clinical research, essentially banned from the pharmaceutical industry forever. Brenda, after serving her sentence, found work as an administrative assistant at a veterinary clinic in Camden, New Jersey. During this period, my work as CICO completely transformed PharmaCorp's culture. I implemented a compliance system that became a model for the entire industry. We created a whistleblower protection program that guaranteed no employee would be punished for reporting irregularities. We established an independent ethics board that reviewed all important decisions. Most importantly, we managed to restore the confidence of the FDA and the public. MindEase, after undergoing completely transparent new clinical trials, was reformulated and eventually relaunched as a genuinely safe and effective medication. We saved not only the company's reputation, but potentially thousands of lives that could have been harmed by the adulterated drug. In December, I received an unexpected call. It was Eleanor Vance, calling from prison. "Robert," her voice sounded tired, defeated. I wanted to apologize." "Apologize for what, Eleanor?" "For everything. For firing you. For trying to bribe you. For not listening to you from the beginning." I was silent for a moment, processing the irony of the situation. "Eleanor, do you know what your biggest mistake was?" "What?" "You thought integrity was a weakness, that following rules was something for people without ambition. You mistook my discretion for complacency, my honesty for naivety." "I know that now," she admitted. "Too late." "It's never too late to learn, Eleanor. You still have years ahead of you when you get out of prison. Use that time wisely." I hung up and looked out the window. The winter sun reflected on the Hudson River, and I thought about how life can change completely in a matter of weeks. 1 year after my termination, I was earning $600,000 annually. The bonus had exceeded all expectations due to exceptional compliance results. But more than the money, I had something that Eleanor, Mark, and Brenda never had. The satisfaction of sleeping peacefully, knowing that my work truly mattered. In March 2025, exactly 1 year after my termination, PharmaCorp received the Excellence in Ethics Award from the American Pharmaceutical Association. As CICO, I was the one who went up on stage in Washington, D.C. to receive the award on behalf of the company. During my speech, I looked at the audience full of industry executives and said, "This award is not mine. It belongs to all the professionals who choose to do the right thing, even when no one is watching. It belongs to those who understand that our first responsibility is not to shareholders or profits, but to the patients who trust our work." The audience stood in an ovation that lasted 3 minutes. That night in my hotel in Georgetown, I received a text message from my daughter Sarah, who worked as a nurse at a hospital in Boston. "Dad, I saw your speech on TV. I'm so proud. You've always been my hero." Hero. There was that word again. But this time it didn't sound strange. It sounded right. Today, 2 years after my termination, I continue as PharmaCorp's CICO. The company not only recovered from the scandal but became a leader in ethical practices in the industry. Our compliance program is studied in business schools. Our corporate governance model has been adopted by dozens of other pharmaceutical companies. And Eleanor, Mark, and Brenda? Eleanor still has 3 years of prison ahead of her. Mark found work as a lab technician at a community college, earning less in a year than he used to earn in a month. Brenda moved to Oregon and works at a natural products store. Sometimes when I'm in my office on the 23rd floor, I look down and see people entering and leaving the building, carrying their ambitions, their fears, their hopes. I remember that every ethical decision we make doesn't exist in a vacuum. It affects real lives, real families, real communities. The lesson I learned, and that I tried to teach through my example, is simple. Integrity is not an abstract concept. It's a daily choice, and when you choose it consistently, even in the most difficult moments, it becomes your greatest strength. Eleanor thought firing me would eliminate a problem. In reality, she had freed the solution. 3 weeks after my termination, their million-dollar scheme collapsed completely. Not because I sought revenge, but because the truth, when properly documented and channeled through appropriate means, always finds a way to the light. Today, when young professionals seek me out asking for advice on how to handle ethical dilemmas at work, I always tell them the same thing. Document everything, follow the correct processes, and never, ever, compromise your integrity for convenience or fear. In the end, the truth always wins. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge, it's simply doing the right thing and letting natural consequences follow their course. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive notifications of new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.